Hey, it's good to see you here. Welcome to my DaVinci Resolve 19 Fairlight crash course. So I'm sure you've been working in Resolve for a little while. Maybe you've got the free version, maybe you even have Studio, and you're just getting into working with some audio. Well, I'm going to take a little bit of time here and spend it with you and just show you the Fairlight tab, kind of give you a little tour around the Fairlight tab, the different things we can do in there, some of the tools as far as what they do and why you might want to use them. I'm not going to go super in-depth on any one particular thing, but I want to give you a good overall view of what we can do in the Fairlight tab here. Now, you can do a ton of audio work right in the Edit tab, or even some in the Cut page. Typically, I'm in the Edit tab, so we can do a lot there, but Fairlight is just going to open up a whole new world of opportunities for you when it comes to working with your audio. I do have a few samples for you that you can go and download. I'll leave a link in the description below. You can try those out, download them. It's going to give you some samples to play with and to try different things, and maybe give some of the things that we talk about here today a try and see how it works for you. Now, I know you're probably going to have questions, so if you do, drop them down below. I'm pretty good at getting back to everybody and answering your questions as best I can, so I'm going to continue to do that. If you've got questions, leave it below, and I'll try and answer those questions for you. But for now, let's jump into DaVinci Resolve 19 and talk about audio in the Fairlight page. So I am in DaVinci Resolve 19 here. Now, it's currently in beta as I'm filming this, but I imagine it's going to be the full release of DaVinci Resolve 19 pretty soon here. Now, I'm going to provide you with several files, and it's going to be 4 different files with different microphones and different audio, so you've got something to work with. And I'll also include the timeline that I'm currently looking at here in the Edit tab. So I'm in the Edit tab. You can load up this if you want, or you can just start from scratch. Really, either way is fine. It doesn't really matter. So let's jump over into the Fairlight tab, which is the musical notes at the bottom here. I'm going to click on that, and it'll jump us over into Fairlight. Now, if for some reason you don't see those musical notes at the bottom here, or you're not sure how to get to the Fairlight page, you can come up to Workspace, come down to Switch Page, and choose Fairlight over here. You can also see the keyboard shortcut right here. If you come down to Show Page right here, you want to make sure that Fairlight's checked on. And the other thing you want to do as we're getting started here looking at Fairlight so that you're looking at the same thing that I'm looking at is under Workspace here. We want to come down to Reset UI Layout right here. Now, I've already done it, and this should be what you see in your Fairlight tab, assuming you loaded up the timeline that I've got here, or if you have no timeline or you created your own timeline, you may see a different number of audio and video tracks, but you want to reset your UI layout so we're all looking at the same thing. So let's do a quick overview of the UI layout here so you kind of know what's going on, where things are, and what different things are that we see on the screen here. So we're going to start right at the top here. Now, obviously you have your menus across the top, which remains consistent through every tab of DaVinci Resolve. Before we click on any of these different tabs and buttons along the top here, let's look at what's on the screen currently. So right here, we've got our meter section, and this is going to show you all of your audio tracks that you have in your timeline. Currently, I've got 4 audio tracks in my timeline. My timeline is down here, and we can see my 4 different audio tracks. The next little section right here, bus 1, that is going to be my bus 1 main output from DaVinci Resolve. So any audio that's getting sent out of DaVinci Resolve, I'm going to see the levels of that bus, of the signal getting sent out of Resolve right here. The next section here is the control room, and as a beginner and just getting started here, you're not even going to have to worry about that at all. The next section here is loudness. Now, what is loudness? If you're new to working with audio, loudness is essentially the overall loudness of your audio when you're done with all of your audio editing. That includes your music, your sound effects, your dialogue, everything at the end. Are we meeting the levels that we need to for YouTube, Netflix, whatever the platform might be? So I'll quickly describe how to check that later on in the video here, just so you have an understanding of how to do that. I do have more in-depth videos on loudness, how to set it, what it means, different settings. And I also have my Audio Essentials for video editors in DaVinci Resolve full course that really deep dives into a lot of the audio stuff, especially if you're a beginner. Really gives you a good foothold on how to get started there. But for now, We'll talk about loudness a little bit later, but this is where you can see the loudness levels, and one way actually that you can see the loudness levels, because like most of the other tabs of DaVinci Resolve, there's more than one way to look at things and do things here in Fairlight. So keep that in mind. There's more than one way, and I'm just going to be showing you some of the ways that we can do different things here in Fairlight. The next section right here is our viewer. So once we put video into our timeline, we'll be able to see it right here. With the viewer here, you've got some options. You've got this, which will allow you to pop it out as a floating window. We can move it wherever we want. We can resize it, make it bigger, smaller. You can throw it on another monitor. And if you want to pop it back in, just hit the dock window icon right here. And we've also got these little tools right here. If we click on that, it's going to allow us to have some tracking controls for doing some automatic tracking when we want the audio to pan. So that's a new tool here in Resolve 19. Pretty cool. I've got some videos on that that you can check out if you're interested. Moving down, we've got our time code right here. And if we right click on it, you can see we can set different ways to view our time code. So you can change that if you need to. Next up right here, we've got our timeline. So if you have multiple timelines, you can click on this drop down and switch timelines right here in Fairlight really quick and easy. Now the timeline I'm going to give you guys is called Fairlight for Beginners. So you can maybe have that in there, or maybe you just have timeline 1 or whatever other timeline you might have. Next, we've got our transport controls. We've got our reverse, our forward, play, stop, record, and loop. Now the record button here is going to be used when you're recording audio directly into DaVinci Resolve. And your loop button does exactly what you would think. It loops your audio and just continues the playback of a section over and over again. Next, we have our automation controls. Now this is a more advanced feature here in DaVinci Resolve that essentially allows you to keyframe. It's called automation in audio, but you can essentially keyframe anything from effects to EQ, to dynamics, to anything. You can pretty much keyframe or automate anything when it comes to audio. And this is where you would start to use some of those tools to do that. Next, we have the automation controls. And if you were to click on that, it's going to open up a whole host of different controls that will allow you to work with the automation tools. And that's more of an advanced thing. I do have videos on that. We're not going to get into that too much in this video, but just to know that the tools are there that you can automate or keyframe pretty much anything when it comes to audio. It's good to know that you can do that. Moving over here under our viewer, we've got our bus 1 going to our output. So it just tells us what is being sent out of Resolve. We've got a volume slider here. We can mute DaVinci Resolve so we don't hear anything. We can change the volume within Resolve, or we can hit the dim button here, which is going to drop the volume back somewhere around, I don't know, 70, 60% or something like that. So you can just turn that on and off if you want to just drop down the volume really quickly. This last button here is for Dolby Atmos, and we're not really going to be talking about that too much in this video. Moving down to the next toolbar, right here we've got some of our timeline view options. So we can click on that and you can see all the different things here that you can toggle on and off, and different controls on how we can work with our audio here in DaVinci Resolve. We can display our video tracks if we want, right? Sometimes when we're working with our audio, it's helpful to see our video tracks. So we can see our video tracks in Fairlight if we want. We can display the full waveforms. We can display waveform borders, the gain line, which if you're not familiar with that, I'll show you once we bring in some audio clips here what that is. But that's going to allow us to change the volume or the levels of our clip really quick and easy by clicking on a line right on the clip itself. Down here, you've got some tools on how the playhead is going to respond to things happening in the timeline. Timeline scrolling, you can use page scrolling, fixed playhead, no scrolling. You can do it however you'd like there. And then we also have options to display video and audio scrollers. And if we were to just click on one of those, for example, let's do an audio scroller here. It's going to put an audio track larger down at the bottom of the screen. And maybe this comes in handy if you have a lot of audio tracks. You can just select whatever track you want right here. And that's what you'll see down here. You can use it as a reference for working with other tracks, but it just gives you a way to put, highlight one track right here at the bottom. And actually, I think you can even do, yes, 2. So you can put the video scroller there. And actually it looks like we can do 3. I didn't even know you could do that many. How about that? We're learning together here. Good thing we're hanging out. So we can add different things down here that you might want to see to use when working with your audio to be able to just compare and contrast different tracks. To turn them off, you can just come in and click them in your timeline view options. And down at the bottom here, we have some zoom presets. So once you have some items in your timeline, these are just various presets that will zoom to different levels on your timeline. Now, if you don't have a cup of coffee, now's a good time to go grab a cup so you can enjoy some time together. We'll have a coffee. We're going to keep on learning more about Fairlight here. Let's get back into it. Right here, we've got our grid view options. And if I click on that, it's going to give us some different options. We can display a grid over top of our audio. We can snap to that grid, and then we can scale it based on the time code or maybe a tempo. If you know the tempo of your music and you're trying to edit to the beat, you can put in the resolution and the time signature if you know that stuff. And really, this is there to kind of help you edit to the beat and edit to specific parts of music if you're interested in doing that. And to turn it off, you just click Display Grid. Moving along here, we've got our pointer mode. This is going to allow us to select clips. We have our range mode that's going to allow us to select a range on our timeline. We've got the focus mode, which is going to give us different tools and different ways of doing things. We have our pencil that allows us to draw different kinds of automation. We have our scissors, which is like your razor to make a cut on your clip. Our magnet tool, which allows us to snap the playhead or clips to different parts of the timeline or other clips. We've got our link icon, which allows us to link our video and audio or link up multiple pieces of audio. Automation follows edit here is going to be a tool when you're working with your automation. We've got flags and we've got markers where you can use to highlight different things, maybe things you need to come back to take a look at or leave notes for somebody else who might be working on your project. Next, we have transient detection, and this is going to automatically highlight and show you where all the transients are in your audio. Then we've got some zoom tools. We can zoom vertically right here. We can zoom horizontally right here. And there's also keyboard shortcuts we're going to talk about that allow you to do the same thing a little bit quicker. Moving down, we've got our whole timeline right down in here. We can see our video tracks as well as our audio tracks. Now, if your audio tracks don't look like mine currently do right here, it may be because this button right here is not turned on. So if I turn that off, we're going to see a couple things disappear there for each track. And we also don't see our bus 1 over here anymore. And that's perfectly fine for right now. So let's just talk about what do we see in each track here. First, you can select any track you want by just clicking in the area that has nothing in it or clicking on the track name. We can rename every track if we want. We can call this, let's call this Jay's Audio, and you can name a track however you want. The A1, A2, A3 just tells us what order the tracks are in. The little number that's over here on the side tells us whether we have a stereo, a mono, a surround sound track. So number 1 means it's a mono track. 2.0 means that that's a stereo track. And if you wanted to change your track to some other kind of format, you can just right click on your track, come down to change track type 2, and here are all the options that you've got available to you. We've got mono, stereo, 3.0, 4.0, surround sound 5, surround sound 7, Dolby Atmos, and adaptive. Now typically, as somebody who's not worked with audio too much, you're just going to be using mono and stereo tracks. Moving down in our track area here, we've got 0.0. Now this number right here, we can click, hold, and drag on here, go up and down, and this is going to correspond to our fader. So if we look over at our faders, we can see right here, this is moving up and down, and if I move it here, our numbers over under our track are moving. So I can reset that by just double clicking on my fader there. We can lock our track right here so that no changes can be made. You can arm your track to record if you're recording directly into DaVinci Resolve. We have the solo button here. Solo allows you to hear only that channel or channels that has the solo button turned on. So right now, if I had audio in this track and I hit the solo button, I would only hear audio coming from this track. If I had multiple tracks selected, I would only hear audio coming from these 2 tracks. And to turn it off, you just click it again. We can also just mute an audio track if we want. Maybe you have a track in there for reference. Maybe it's scratch audio and you want it there, but you don't want to listen to it. You can just click on mute. And finally, right over here, we have a meter that once we drop in some audio, you're going to be able to see the meter move so we can tell what the levels of our audio clip are. And finally, we have our mixer over here, and our mixer is going to be where we can see a lot of different things and have a lot of different tools available to us to work with our audio. So I can extend this out by hovering over right here, getting this little icon. You can drag it out. So let's just take a look at one track here, or one channel, I should say, and they're all the same. The buses are going to be a little bit different. but our individual tracks are going to have the same tools available to us. Up at the top here, we've got input. So if you're recording directly into Resolve, you can select an input. We've got track level effects right here. So we have voice isolation and the dialogue leveler. Now those are going to be applied to your clip first when you're working with your audio. So if you were to turn this on, then the voice isolation, which is a studio only feature, is going to be applied to your audio track. So anything you do in the mixer here is going to apply to the entire track. So that's important to keep in mind. The order says what order do things happen to my audio, right? So if I click on the drop down here, each one of these tells us a different order of the signal for our audio. For example, what's checked on now is our audio will go to any effects, then it will go to dynamics, then it will go to EQ. And you can see there's different combinations of orders here. Now it depends on the situation, on your audio, which one you want to use. But as a beginner, I would recommend using this one right here, EQ, dynamics, and then effects. Now, why would I use that? I would choose that because what we want to do is start with our audio. We want to set our levels and make sure we've got good audio levels. Then we want to use the EQ to remove anything that doesn't sound good, right? That's harsh, that's maybe making our audio sound not so great. Then we want to use some dynamics there to add a little compression and just make the audio sound a little more balanced. And then we want to go ahead and apply any effects to it. So typically, I think as a beginner there, the best way that you can set this up for your order is to go EQ, dynamics, and effects. The next section we have here is effects. And if I click on the little plus, you'll see we've got all these different categories with different effects. Now I've got a lot of extra effects in here, but if I come to something like channel, you're going to see Fairlight effects. We've got dialogue processor, vocal channel. We've got different delays and echoes. You've got different types of dynamics like limiters and multiband compressors. Now, all the ones that you have in the free version and in Studio, some of these you may only have in Studio or may only work in Studio, but they're all going to be under the Fairlight effects. Now, if you have third-party audio plugins, you can use those right here in Resolve as well. And if I were to look under VST, you see I've got a whole bunch of Waves plugins down here. I use a lot of them, really good stuff. So Fairlight is great if you want to bring plugins from one program to another, or maybe you picked them up somewhere else and you want to bring them into Resolve. You can use your plugins right here in Fairlight. Next, we've got our effects in. So if I have an effect applied on my channel right here, then I'm going to turn this on and it's going to insert the effect on my channel, which just means make the effect active. Next, we've got dynamics here. So if I just double click this and open it up, we've got our dynamics. Now, our dynamics has a bunch of different things going on here. If we just take a look at the top section here, we've got our input, gives us our input levels. We've got our graph here that shows us how our dynamics are affecting our clip. We've got our gain reduction, which will show us different. We've got our gain reduction, which will show us different things here. It'll show us any gate or expander that's active. It'll show us any compressor and what that level is, how much it's compressing. And it'll also show us any limiting if we've got a limiter applied. The makeup gain here is going to allow you to boost things up a little bit. We'll talk a little bit more about the dynamics here in a little bit. But we've also can see our output levels, and we have a sidechain that we can work with here in Resolve. Down below on the bottom, we've got tools for our expanders, our gates, our compressor, as well as a limiter. Next up, we've got EQ. You can double click on the EQ to open it up. And this is our EQ right here. We've got 6 bands to work with. Now keep in mind, all these will apply on the entire track. So you can edit and work with the EQ a lot of different ways. We'll get into it in just a little bit, see how it works here. I'll show you a few tips and tricks, but you can just grab a point, move it around if you want. You can use the tools down here, which essentially are going to do the same thing as grabbing the point for you. But the EQ is one of the primary tools that's going to help your audio sound better because it's going to allow you to remove things that don't sound good. And that is one of the most important things when it comes to working with audio is taking out the stuff that doesn't sound good. You don't want to just pile on effects and pile things on. You want to make sure that if something doesn't sound good, you're taking that out. So we'll get into EQ more in a little while. And if you need to reset anything, this little icon that you see all over Resolve will reset everything for you. So I'm going to go ahead and close our EQ. Next up, we have bus sends. Now we only have one bus and everything is going there. This would be used if you wanted to have effects and you wanted to send a channel maybe to multiple effects or send a channel to another bus. So we're not going to be using that now, but it's good to know that it's there. We've got pan to pan our audio right, left, front, back, and even in 3D space, you can pan your audio. Now to move down the mixer here, I'm going to use my middle mouse wheel and just scroll down. And if you're not seeing any of these things, for example, you're like, hey, I don't see the pan, come on up to the 3 little dots right here and make sure that all of these options are checked on so that you can see all the stuff that we currently see. And you can even add the track level effects here. Right now, I showed you we saw voice isolation and the dialogue leveler, but we can also include the dialogue separator, music remixer, and the ducker right here in the mixer if we wanted to see those. So next up, we've got our bus outputs. So where are our tracks being sent, right? So this is going to go to our outputs from DaVinci Resolve. So our bus 1 here is our main output from DaVinci Resolve. All of our tracks need to get sent there, or they need to get sent to another bus and then sent to our main output, which is bus 1. So right now you see all of our tracks are going to bus 1. So a bus might sound kind of confusing and like, why do they call the main output bus 1? Resolve has a flexible bus system, and this allows you to use a bus for multiple different things. You can use it as an auxiliary input, as an effects bus, and really just a bus is nothing more than a group of channels, right? We can send things to a bus, we can have multiple things in a bus, but just think of a bus as like a group of channels. That's going to be the easiest way to kind of understand what a bus means. So you think about a school bus, you throw a bunch of kids in a school bus and you've got a bunch of kids in a school bus. So same thing, we can throw a bunch of tracks into a bus and do different things with them if we need to. We can send them to different places, we can have different tracks react to them, we can apply effects to them. So bus is nothing more than grouping things together. Below that, we've got VCAs, and if we click in the blank area here, you can see we've got 10 different VCAs that we can assign tracks to. Now, all that is grouping tracks together so that you can adjust the fader volume of them together. So for example, if I were to put, these into a VCA and open up my mixer a little bit, you see now I've got a VCA. So let's say I adjusted my 2 tracks, I like them like that, but I wanted to raise and lower the volume together. Well, now the VCA is going to allow me to do that, right? So a VCA is similar to a bus, but with a bus, you can make a lot more changes. You can add effects and dynamics. But with a VCA, all you can do is adjust the volume using the fader together. Now, these are going to stay in the same ratio as each other. It looks like they spread out a little bit, only because as you get down in the fader, the numbers get closer together, but it keeps the same ratio and distance between them. So that's one way that you can work with multiple tracks if you wanted to. As a beginner, you don't even have to worry about it, but it's just good to know that it's there. Then we also have groups. So we can create groups of different channels, different ways to look at things. If I click on the create group up here, we can name the group whatever we want. And in the group, we can control any one of these different items here, or we can control all of them. Really, it just depends whatever you want to do. And then you can add in any track or bus into your group and have a different way to look at your channels, work with your audio. It just gives you options on how to put things together. And tools like these are more important once you start getting into multiple audio tracks. You've got a lot of stuff going on. You've got multiple sound effects tracks or music tracks or dialogue. That's where this kind of thing comes in really handy. But as a beginner here, you're not going to need it. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit cancel. So that's the basics of the interface there and what we're looking at. Now let's get into some of those menus at the top, many of which you're going to be familiar with from seeing them in other parts of DaVinci Resolve. So I'm not going to spend too much time on a lot of them because you're probably already familiar with them, but let's take a quick look just in case you're not sure what they all are. Starting at the top of Resolve here, you've got your media pool. So you should be familiar with your media pool. You've seen it in other tabs of DaVinci Resolve. We have our effects. Now these are your audio effects. We've got transitions, as well as all of our audio effects that we also saw in the mixer. Like many parts of Resolve, we can see the same thing in multiple different spots, work with it in multiple different ways. And right here, we've got the Fairlight effects. So these are all the ones that you should see by default. You should see them in the free version as well as in Studio. Now keep in mind, some of them may only work when you're using Studio, but the majority of them will work in the free version. And if you're wondering what any of these do, I actually have videos on every single one of these. I created one video for each effect to show you how it works, run over the knobs, the buttons and the dials, what it all does, how it works. So that's on my channel. There's a big playlist of that if you're interested in learning more about any one of these effects. The VST and AU effects, they are all effects that are Waves effects for me that I got lots of them. So any third-party plugins that you have would also appear over here, probably under VST effects. I'm going to close that. We've got our index right here. So this is going to show you several different things. We've got our edit index. So if you've got markers and things, you're going to see that here. We've got our tracks. So this is really handy because this allows us to move our tracks around really quickly. Now, since we're in Fairlight here, we can only move our audio tracks, but if I wanted to move this one, I can click, hold, and drag it down, and I can put it wherever I want. I can also move the bus. If I want to grab that and move it up here, I can do that. And it's going to change the location of my tracks in my timeline, as well as in my mixer over here. So we can see it different ways. So it's really helpful, especially when you start getting a lot of tracks, a lot of sound effects tracks, and you want to move them around. It's really handy to just come in here in the tracks, in the index, and just move them all around. And if you do have any groups set up, you will see those groups right here. And I should mention, under the tracks here, you do get different information. You can see a lot of the same stuff that we see over here in our track area right here below the name. We can also see it up in here. What kind of format, what order it's in. You can turn it on and off. Let's say I don't want to see a bunch of tracks. Maybe they're in my way and I just want to work with a particular track. I can just turn them off so that I've only got one audio track to work with. I'll still hear everything, but I don't have to see it and it's not in my way. So that comes in really handy here. Next, you've got the sound library. Now, DaVinci Resolve, or I should say Blackmagic Design, does have a free sound library that you can download. I've got a whole video on how to do that. I'll link it above if you want to check that out, but it's free and it's got like 500 sound effects in it. But you can go over there and check that out if you want. And just to see what that looks like, if I put in star period star, it's going to bring up everything here. You can see all these different sound effects. You can click on any one of them, give it a little preview, hear what it sounds like. And if you wanted to add any of them to your timeline, all you have to do is click, hold, drag it in your timeline, boom, it's in your timeline. I'm going to undo that with Command or Control Z. So the sound library comes in handy. You can even create your own sound library from your own sound effects, with your music, with anything you want. You can create your own libraries as well. The next item we have here is ADR. So this is automated dialogue replacement. So this allows you to redo a voiceover or maybe a part or a scene. You need to add in some new dialogue because if you're like me, you probably messed up and we need to redo it. So this is going to allow us to create a list. We can put in the text so we can read it off the screen while we're trying to re-record whatever we need. I've got a whole video on ADR, on voiceovers, how it all works. There's a lot to it. It's not terribly hard, but there are a lot of things you need to know on how it works. But it's a really great tool, being able to record directly into Resolve and using the ADR tools. So if you need to do some dialogue replacement, a really good tool that you want to check out. You want to check out my video on how to use the ADR tools because it's going to come in real handy for you. And coming over to the right side, we've got our mixer, which we've already talked about. That turns it on and off. We've got our meters, so we can turn our meters on and off. Maybe you don't need to see all your meters at the top and you need a little more real estate on your screen to work with your audio. Just turn off the meters. Boom, look at that. We got some more space. You can look at the metadata for your clips, and we have our friend, the inspector, where we can do a whole lot of different things with our audio clips. So now you got a little overview of the Fairlight window. It's not as scary as you might think. It's not too bad. It's just like any other part of Resolve. You spend a little bit of time in there. You're going to find some of the common tools that you use, and you're going to get pretty comfortable pretty quickly. So now let's take some of the samples that I provided for you guys. Again, if you don't have the samples, link down below. We're going to drop them into a timeline here, and we're just going to take a look at them. I'm going to talk about some of the different things we can do with our audio, how some of these tools that we just looked at work, and I'm going to talk about the process of working with our audio. Like, where do we start? How do I know what to do? I didn't even know, right? I've been there. I know how you're feeling. So I'm going to try and walk step by step through how you start to think about your audio, how you start to work with your audio, and just give you some guidance on how to get started here. And I do want to let you guys know that if you're interested in deep diving into this stuff a little bit more, really understanding your audio, how to work with it, how these tools work in a little more detail, I do have a course that you might be interested in where we work together to put together a mini documentary. The class is called Audio Essentials for Video Editors in DaVinci Resolve. There's a link in the description below. Maybe it's something that you're interested in. You get a lot of practice files, a lot of freebies, EQ presets. You get all kinds of downloadable files and reference guides to look at. So if you are looking to learn more in depth about some audio, you might want to check that out. Or if you want to stick with the free stuff, I've got tons of stuff about audio here on my YouTube channel. Just search for whatever you might be looking for. My coffee's almost done, so we better get back into Resolve here. Let's throw in some clips and see what we're working with. So we can add in our audio right here in Fairlight, but let's jump into the Edit tab since we're going to be adding in some video with it, just because it may be easier and you may be more familiar with adding in clips in the Edit page. You could do it in the Cut page too. Personally, I don't use the Cut page, so I'm going to jump over to Edit. So click on Edit at the bottom. So now that we're in the Edit page here, I've got my media pool open and I got the samples right here in my media pool. So I'm just going to drag each one of these clips down into my timeline. So now I've got my 4 clips in my timeline. Let's jump back into Fairlight and start working with our audio a little bit. So musical notes at the bottom jump us back into Fairlight. So as we start working with our audio clips, a couple tips on how to navigate around our timeline here. Now you can use your Command or Control on a PC, plus and minus to zoom in, just like we can in the Edit tab. Now a lot of these things, they're all going to work in the Edit tab as well because you're in your timeline, so they're going to be working either in Fairlight or in the Edit tab. Works great in both spots. We can use our middle mouse wheel. If you have one, we can click, hold, and drag back and forth to pan. We can use our Shift key in our middle mouse wheel to make our tracks bigger vertically. And you can see it's affecting our vertical zoom right here, but it's just quicker to use the Shift key and your middle mouse wheel. If you don't have a middle mouse wheel, you gotta get one. I mean, it comes in so handy here in Resolve. If you use your Control or Command key in your middle mouse wheel, it's gonna pan back and forth, just like pushing on the mouse wheel. We can do the same thing that way. If you use your Option or Alt key plus the middle mouse wheel, it's gonna zoom in horizontally on the timeline. If you scroll back, it's gonna zoom out horizontally. Now coming back up to our toolbar here and just taking a look at a couple of these tools here, most of the time you've got your pointer selected and that's gonna allow you to select your clips. We've got our range tool. So if I click on that, that's gonna allow us to select a range and it's gonna set in and out points for us. And the reason this might come in handy is if we set in and out points, let's do it over on this clip. Let's make it like that. And then I wanted to play this part over and over again. I can come up and hit the loop icon and then just hit your space bar and then this part will play over and over again. And this would be a good time to grab some headphones for myself so I can actually hear something. All right, that's better. Let's hear what we've got.
I'm gonna do a whole lot better job than no microphone or the internal microphone on my 5D Mark IV.
So there you see it repeats. It goes right back to the beginning there. So range tool comes in really handy for selecting different ranges on your timeline. And if you want to clear your in and out points, it's really easy. Just use your Alt or Option key plus X. And that's going to go ahead and get rid of those in and out points for you. Again, all this stuff will work in the Edit tab as well. So now taking a look at our individual clips here, we see this white line. Now that's called the gain line. So if you don't see that on your clips, you want to come back to your timeline view options, display gain line, and make sure that that's checked on. And what the gain line does is it allows you to adjust the volume of the clip itself. So I can come up here and raise it up. I can lower it down. And how do I know where I want to put this? Well, this is called setting your levels, right? We want to have good levels for our dialogue. So for example, let's hear how this sounds if this is just at 0. So I can adjust it right here using the gain line. Or if I selected the clip, I can come to the inspector here and adjust the volume. And the gain line and the volume are the same thing. Now, when I adjust the volume and the gain line, that is not the same as coming down here and adjusting my fader. The fader is going to work the same way, adjusting the volume up and down, but it's a separate tool that allows you to adjust the overall volume of a particular clip. So the way I like to do it is to use either the volume slider or the gain line here first. And I like to use the faders later on when I'm trying to blend sounds together. Maybe it's a mix of sound effects and dialogue and music. I'll use the faders there to blend it together. But as far as setting my levels to make sure I've got good levels and a good place to start with my audio clips, I want to make sure that I use either the volume in the inspector or the gain line, which essentially does the same thing. Now, how do I know where these levels should be? Because that's the first step in my audio process. If you don't have good levels, the rest of everything going on down for your audio might not work out so good. So we want to make sure we've got good levels. So let's see where this clip is at if we don't add or remove any gain or any audio level or volume. Let's see where we're at. And to tell where we're at, we're going to watch our meters down here in the mixer. So we're on track 1. And I'm just going to watch to see where the meter lights up.
Now you're hearing the Saramonic VMic 5 Pro. Now this microphone is an on-camera microphone. It's going to do a whole lot better job than...
So you saw our meter moving there. Now when a line stops and you see one line just hanging there, that's telling you that's the loudest point of the clip so far. And that'll change over time, but it gives you a good reference point to say, okay, that's kind of where our levels are at. So let's see where we're currently at.
Microphone, it's going to do a whole lot better job than no microphone or the internal.
So it looks like it's around that minus 15 dB. Now that's not terrible, that's pretty good. As long as your dialogue is in the yellow range, that's kind of what you want. Typically, I like to try and get my levels to be around that minus 10 dB right here. So in order to try and make the audio meet those levels, I'm going to make it a little bit louder. I'm going to come to my gain line and I'm just going to boost this up a little bit. Now how much? That depends on how quiet your clip is, right? I'm trying to go up like 5 dB, so I can try boosting this by 5. Now, when I move my mouse wheel up and down, you see it kind of jumps the numbers a little fast there. But if I hold my shift key, that's going to allow me to move the numbers a little bit slower there. So I'm going to go to 5. Now let's play through our audio clip and see where our levels are currently at.
Internal microphone on my 5D Mark IV. This is the second sample that you'll get to work with. It should be a little bit easier to work with and edit.
All right, so now we're between 10 and 15. Let's boost it up some more. Let's just go up to 10 and see where we're at there. Bring it right to 10, come back a little.
Then no microphone or the internal microphone on my 5D Mark IV. This is the second sample that you'll get to work with. It should be a little bit easier.
Okay, so that's good. We're getting to that minus 10 dB. That's where I want it to be. It's okay if it goes a little over or it's a little under, but you want to be in that ballpark of minus 10 dB. Now that's going to be your setting for your dialogue tracks. Music is going to be a little bit different. Sound effects can vary quite a bit, but when it comes to your dialogue, I would recommend that you aim for that minus 10 dB. And in order to get to that minus 10 dB, you're going to adjust your audio clips using the gain line and try and get as close to that 10 dB as you can. Now you don't want to peak and go over too much because you want a little bit of headroom, they call it, right? So from 0 dB down to 10, we want to make sure we've got headroom where we can still work with our audio a little bit. Now this is where it's important to keep in mind our order of working with our audio. And we kind of talked about that a little bit, right? Right here with our order. So how do we work with our order? Here's what I'm going to recommend. What you want to do is bring in your audio clips into your timeline. The first thing you want to do is set your levels like we just talked about there. That's going to be your base to start with for any of your audio. Could be sound effects, could be music, could be dialogue. Whatever it is, you want to set those levels good. For dialogue, I recommend minus 10 dB. For sound effects, it could be anywhere from minus 1, minus 2 dB down to minus 30 dB. Depends on the sound effect and the impact that you want it to have on your video. For music, again, when you get music from maybe some online places or wherever you get your music, typically it's going to be mastered to be really loud. So you're going to be right below, 0 dB. You're almost going to be peaking because the music is mastered very loud. So typically I like to drop that back to about minus 10 dB, give or take a little bit. And that's up to you. Do you like your music a little louder, a little quieter? But if you just have music with no dialogue under it, you're probably going to want to go somewhere around, that minus 10 dB, give or take a little bit depending on your preference. Now, if you're trying to put music below your dialogue, probably looking to set that somewhere between minus 20 and minus 30. It's going to vary depending on the music clip, the instruments, the singing, whatever it might be. That's going to be up to you to determine how loud you want it to be. But you want to just make sure that nothing is peaking, getting all the way up to the top of those meters or being too loud because it's just going to destroy the audio and you don't want that. Once you've got your good audio level set, that's your starting point, you're good to go. The next thing that we want to take a look at is our EQ. Now, I've got lots of videos on EQ, some in-depth crash courses, and it's also talked about a lot in my class if you're interested in checking that out. We're going to take a quick look at it here. I'm just going to give you a brief explanation of how it works, show you what it does. But once we've set our levels, we want to go to the EQ and remove anything that does not sound good. Before you ever boost in your EQ, you generally want to make cuts to various frequencies that might be causing some problems for you. So let's get into a little EQ. Now, keep in mind when we use our EQ, it's going to be applied on the entire track. If we did want to apply an EQ to a particular clip, we can select the clip, have our inspector open, be in the audio tab here. Now, all of these items that we see here in the inspector will apply to the clip only. So you do have a little 4-band EQ you can turn on here in your clip. Generally, I'm going to do track level EQ work first, but you can use the individual clip EQ here too if you need to. But for now, we're going to be using our track level EQ right here in our mixer. So I'm going to go ahead and close my inspector. Now, the other important thing here to do as we start to work with our audio is to put the different types of audio into their own track. Now in Fairlight here, I can just select the audio. I can hold the Option or Alt key and press my down arrow, and it's going to move it straight down into a track. And I want to do that for each one of my audio clips. So Option or Alt, I'm going to press down twice to drop it down 2 tracks. Select my audio track here, drop it down 3 times so it's in its own track. Now, before we get into working with the EQ real quick, I just want to mention our track setups, right? So we have 2 mono tracks, and we know they're mono because we have a number 1 here. So that is going to give us the same audio out of our right and left speakers, or our right and left channels. So I have 2 pieces of audio that are mono. Now, since I just moved down my 2 samples from sample 3 and 4, you notice when they were up here, we didn't see any waveforms, and you might be wondering why. So if we scroll down, you could see my audio track 3 and 4 I put into a stereo track. And we know that because it says 2.0 and 2.0. So if we look at our clip that we moved down, we can see we've got our left channel and our right channel. Now, only our right channel has audio. Our left channel has no audio in it. So you're going to see a problem when we get there in a minute, and I'm going to show you how to fix it. It's pretty easy, but we've only got audio in the right side. I'll just show you real quick what that sounds like.
Another type of microphone that's pretty popular right now is these little guys. Now,
so you should only hear it in one side of your headphones or your speakers or whatever you have. The reason for that is because I was using a wireless lav. I kind of explain it in the video clip there. And I can use 2 lavs that will record 2 people, one to the right channel, one to the left channel. And then I can use, each one of those pieces of audio in Resolve. But in this case, I only was recording myself, so there was only 1 track recorded, which went into the right channel. I actually have a whole video that I just recently put out about working with this and how to fix it. I'll show you briefly how to do it in a little bit, but let's get to working with our EQ first, and then we'll come back to these clips here, and I'll show you how to fix those up. So our audio track 2 here, we are going to work with our EQ. Audio track 2, I'm going to come to my EQ here, and actually I do need to change my order because I moved it to a new track, so I'm going to change my track order. EQ, Dynamics, Effects, click open the EQ. Now the EQ here is a really powerful tool that allows us to remove different frequencies and clean up our audio quite a bit. So one thing we're going to do here is actually use our range selection tool. I'm going to select my audio clip here. Make sure your looping icon is turned on and then just put the playhead in there. And now we're going to be able to loop this over and over again and make some changes to the EQ. So to make changes, all you're going to do is grab a point, bring it up, listen for anything that sounds harsh or does not sound good, and that's where we're going to want to make a cut. So I get a lot more into this in other videos and in my class, but let's just run through this and you can see how I would edit this audio clip.
Entering the Saramonic VMic 5 Pro. Now this microphone is an on-camera microphone. It's going to do a whole lot better job than no microphone or the internal microphone on my 5D Mark IV. This is the second sample that you'll get to work with. It should be a little bit easier to work with and edit and make it sound awesome because the internal mics on the camera aren't so good, but the external mics are going to do a lot better job for you. All right, let's go. Entering the Saramonic VMic 5 Pro. Now this microphone is an on-camera microphone. It's going to do a whole lot better job than no microphone or the internal microphone on my 5D Mark IV. This is the second sample that you'll get to work with. It should be a little...
Okay, so I made some quick adjustments there. I added on a high pass filter, which cuts out all the low end. You can see our frequencies as we play through the clip there. You got your frequency analyzer in there. And I just found a couple of spots that sounded harsh to my ear, and I made cuts in those areas. A little boost on the top end to increase the clarity a little bit. And here's a little before and after what it sounds like.
A little bit easier to work with and edit and make it sound awesome because the internal mics on the camera aren't so good, but the external mics are going to do a lot better job for you.
So it makes a good difference there, cleans it up a little bit. Now it does sound like to me in my headphones it lost a little body and warmth, but we can add that back in with an effect later. So for now, that's good. And again, if you want to know more about what frequencies you find different problems and how to work with the EQ more, again, I've got more videos on that you can deep dive into if you want to. So I'm going to close the EQ. Next, let's jump into our dynamics. And another quick tip here is that you can just single click on any one of these to turn them on and off. Really handy tip to know. So I'm going to double click dynamics, open this guy up. I'm going to start by turning on the compressor. Now, when it comes to our compressor settings, again, I deep dive into this in other videos. You can leave it at its default settings. Maybe you want to crank up the ratio to 2.5 to 1. Let's play through our clip and see if we're getting any gain reduction here in our compressor section. And you want to do at most -6 dB. And you can always dial back your threshold to allow that compressor to kick in a little bit quicker. But let's go ahead and see what we got.
Entering the Saramonic VMic 5 Pro. Now, this microphone is an on-camera microphone. It's going to do a whole lot better job than no microphone or the internal microphone on my 5D Mark IV. This is the second sample that you'll get to work with. It should be a little bit easier to work with and edit and make.
Okay, so I just turned on my compressor. We can see we're getting some compression based on this graph right here. Now, I'm checking my input levels to see what I have coming in. And I'm using my makeup slider to take everything and make it a little bit louder, right? And then I'm watching my output levels, and you'll notice that it gets pretty close and stays pretty close to that -10 dB, and it's not fluctuating so much. And that's what the compressor is going to do. It's going to help balance out our audio.
It sound awesome because the internal mics on the camera aren't so good, but the external mics are going to do a.
So the makeup is going to make the quiet parts a little bit louder, and then the compressor is going to make sure that our loud parts stay, in a decent range and don't get too loud for us. Now, the expander and gate are going to help remove lower end noise that you might have in your clips. For example, in this next little section here, if I zoom in on my timeline, you can see where I take a breath or I don't talk. Sounds like this.
A lot better job for you.
So let's say I wanted to get rid of that noise there. So let's just create a little range right here. Our expander can drop the signal down quicker. So if I come in here, bring up my threshold, increase my ratio, we can see the expander's working. Now listen what happens in this little area right here.
All right, let's go. Better job for you. All right, let's go. Better job for you.
Hear the difference there? So it just drops the volume of those quieter things a little bit more. Now you don't have to do it as much as I showed there. You can do it a little less if you want. But the expander is nice to just bring down and make quieter some of those background noises that might get in the way. And you've also got your limiter over here if you want to use a limiter. Couple presets up here you can try out that come in DaVinci Resolve. Again, this is all in the free version as well. And just a note, if you're familiar with sidechain, you've got some sidechain controls here. That's more advanced than I'm going to get to in this video. But quick overview of dynamics there, how it all works. And I've got a lot of videos that go more in depth on that, show you how it works, talk about all the buttons, knobs, and dials, as well as my audio course. You can check that out too. Now, when it comes to effects, you can apply any number of effects. If I click on the effects here, again, all these are going to apply to the entire track. Two effects that I like to use on my dialogue are, if I come into Dynamics Effects, I like the multi-band compressor, and I also like to use come down to Restoration, Fairlight Effects, and de-esser. Now, the de-esser is just going to help with some of those harsh S frequencies. You can pick one of the presets here, start with that, and you should be good to go. You can make some little changes if you need to. And then on the multi-band compressor here, this is going to help just bring back some of that warmth and body to the vocal or the dialogue there. So let's go ahead and create a new range here, select that much, do a little before and after, making some adjustments on the multi-band compressor here.
Then no microphone or the internal microphone on my 5D Mark IV. Job then no microphone or the internal microphone on my 5D Mark IV. Job then no microphone or the internal microphone on my 5D Mark IV. Job then, no microphone or the internal microphone on my 5D Mark IV. Job then, no microphone or the internal microphone on my 5D Mark IV. Job then, no microphone or the internal microphone on my 5D Mark IV. Job then, no microphone or the internal microphone on my 5D Mark IV.
There you go. That just helps apply a little bit of compression to different frequency ranges. You can make adjustments. Again, I've got videos on this in depth on how to work with it, as well as in my course I talk about it too. But a good handy tool to help bring back some warmth and body to those dialogues that you may be working with. Now, if you do need some noise reduction, the best tool that you're going to have to take care of some noise reduction, just to touch on it real quick, is voice isolation, which unfortunately is only available in the free version, but that is going to do the best job for you in removing background noise. It does an insanely good job, and if you have any background noise, that's going to be the best tool that you have. The dialogue leveler, actually, if we open that up, does have a noise background reduction in it. That does work okay, not as good as the voice isolation, but this is available in the free version, so you can go ahead and give that a try if you've got background noise you're trying to get rid of. So let's clear our in and out points here real quick, and let's just touch really quickly on our audio clip down here in our track 3 and 4, how we only have audio coming out of one channel. So let's go ahead and play this and listen to what we got.
Now, they do come in handy, they do work well. In my opinion, this looks doofy. Oh, I got some deer running back there. It looks doofy and it's tick.
You can see that it's only coming through the right channel. So you've got a couple ways that we can deal with this. One way is to right click and change our track to a mono track. But then you notice, wait a second, there's nothing there. And if I play it, I don't hear anything. Typically dialogue is going to be mono tracks, but you can do it either way if you want. So what you want to do if you have a stereo track and you're only getting audio out of one channel is right click on the clip, come down to clip attributes. In clip attributes, come to the audio section, and down here we can see that we've got our right and left channels, and we have embedded channel 1 and embedded channel 2. Now we know we're only hearing audio out of the right channel, so we can change our embedded channel 1 and 2 to both be embedded channel 2. Hit OK. Give it a second to regenerate those waveforms, and now we're going to hear audio in both tracks.
It's pretty popular right now is these little guys. Now, they do come in handy, they do work well. In my opinion, this looks...
So if you made your track a mono track, you would need to do the same thing in clip attributes. The other option you can do here in clip attributes, bringing this up again, is just to change the format to a mono format, and then just use the embedded channel that has the audio in it. So you can do it either way. Like I said, typically you're going to use a mono track for dialogue, but if you want your dialogue to be panning around for some reason, you know, and it sounds like it's moving, then you may want to use a stereo track. But that's how you can fix your audio when you only hear it in one ear. So now what you're going to want to do is go through all of these audio tracks, work with them, try out the samples, use the dynamics, the EQ, the effects, adjust your faders a little bit, and try and see what you can do with your audio tracks. Now, let's say we added in music, we added in sound effects, we've got a full video ready to go. That's when you would want to come in and check the overall loudness. Now for YouTube, the loudness levels that you're allowed to meet are -14 dB. And in order to take a look at the loudness, this is getting a little more in-depth. And again, I've got more information and videos about it, but just showing you really quickly, checking the loudness. We can come up to our loudness section here, click on the drop down. I'm going to use YouTube because that's where I upload all my videos. I'm going to go ahead and hit reset and start. Move my playhead to the beginning of my timeline. Next, we want to come and click on this toggle automation. We see our bus 1. And if I come here and make this a little bit bigger, we get our loudness history. So I'm going to go ahead and click that on. And I'm actually just going to mute this while we play back our video. So you need to play this back in real time. And you can see down here, it's going to start to plot a line for us. So if I zoom in, it's plotting a line, and it's telling us right now we're at -32 dB about. So we can go all the way up to this -14. So you can use a combination of looking right here in your loudness history graph, as well as up in here to see your short-term loudness, your max loudness, your range, your LUFS level, where it's going, as well as your integrated level. Now, typically you're looking at this integrated level right here, and that's what you want to be close to, but not over -14 dB. So you can see now it's all kind of raising up and getting a little closer to that -14. And the integrated is a measurement over time. So this green bar is going to show you that you're not peaking. If there's any red spots, that means you're peaking. It's too loud. But the blue line here is going to show you where your loudness levels are. And again, that integrated level number that we see right here in our loudness section is the same as this blue line down here. So for YouTube, you want to be close to, but not over that minus 14 LUFS. And if you need to make an adjustment, there's a lot of ways you can do it. You can boost your bus 1, you can lower your bus 1, you can add an effect that has a gain, a reduction or boost to it. You can modify your levels that way. But this is an overall adjustment after you've done all of your other audio editing. All right, so that is a quick rundown of the Fairlight page. I know it was still a long video here. It was great to hang out with you, and thanks for sticking around and going through this with me here. There is so much to Fairlight. There's a ton of stuff that we didn't cover, just like every other part of DaVinci Resolve. There's so much in Fairlight that I don't know that you ever get to the bottom of it. But I'm trying, and I'm gonna share all of it with you along the way. So if you have questions about working with your audio, how to take care of problems, different tools, I've got tons and tons of videos on all this stuff, on how to work with all the knobs, buttons, and dials, what it all does, different tips and tricks. Just browse through my channel there. I've got playlists, I've got videos of all kinds of stuff related to audio. And audio is super important because it's half your video. I venture to say even more than half, because you might have good looking video, but if your audio doesn't sound good, nobody's gonna wanna watch it. So important that your audio sounds the best that you can make it. And if you really want to deep dive and build that mini documentary with me, work on the audio, check out my Audio Essentials for Video Editors in DaVinci Resolve class. That's linked down below. It's going to give you all the info you need to get started working with your audio, as well as a lot of handouts and other freebies, EQ presets, and fun stuff like that. So you can check that out if you want to learn more. With that said, I hope this DaVinci Resolve 19 Fairlight crash course was helpful. If you have questions, comments, perhaps a concern, leave it down below. I would love to answer any questions that you guys have. And with that said, my cup is just about empty here, and it might be time for a refill. Thanks so much for watching. It was great to hang out with you, and I'll see you in the next video.